Claire stared at it. She looked from his hand to his face, searching for something. An explanation. An apology. The truth. She didn't know if she should take it. Didn't know what it meant. But her hand moved before her mind decided, and she placed her fingers in his. His hand closed around hers, gently, carefully. His palm was sweaty. She could feel him trembling. He turned to face the crowd, still holding her hand. Vanessa made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Her maid of honor, a woman in a gold dress, put an arm around her shoulders. The officiant stepped back, clearly out of his depth. The photographer lowered his camera, recognizing this was not a moment to capture. Daniel opened his mouth twice before words came out. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but steady. "I need to tell you all something," he said. "Something I should have said a long time ago. Something I should never have hidden." He paused. Swallowed. Continued. "This is Claire. She is my wife." The room exploded. Gasps. Shouts. People standing. Vanessa's knees buckled and two bridesmaids caught her, lowering her into a chair someone pulled forward. Her face was white. Her breathing was rapid, panicked. Someone near the back shouted, "What the hell is going on?" Someone else said, "I can't believe this." A woman in the third row started crying. Daniel raised his free hand, asking for quiet. It took a long moment, but eventually the room settled into a tense, brittle silence. Everyone leaning forward, desperate to understand. "Legally, we are still married," Daniel continued. His voice was steadier now, as if confession was giving him clarity. "We never finalized our divorce. The papers were filed but never processed completely. I knew this. I knew, and I chose not to fix it. I chose to ignore it. I told myself it was just a technicality, that the marriage was over in every way that mattered. But that wasn't true. I was lying. To Vanessa. To all of you. To myself." He looked at Vanessa. "I told you I was divorced. I told you my ex-wife had moved on. I told you there was nothing standing in our way. All of that was a lie." Vanessa was shaking. Mascara ran down her face. "How long have you been lying?" she asked, her voice breaking. "From the beginning," Daniel admitted. "From the first night we met." A man in the front row, someone who looked like Daniel's business partner, stood up. "Daniel, what are you doing? You're destroying your life." "No," Daniel said. "I already destroyed it. I'm just finally admitting it." He turned back to Claire. "There's more. Claire is 7 months pregnant. With my child. Our child. I knew about the pregnancy. She told me the night I found out. And I left her. I filed for divorce. I abandoned her when she needed me most. I told myself I deserved a fresh start. That I had worked too hard to be dragged down by the past. That I needed to be free to build the life I wanted. Every word of that was selfishness disguised as self-care. It was cowardice disguised as courage." The room erupted again. More voices. More shock. Some people were standing now, as if preparing to leave. Others stayed frozen in their seats, unable to look away. Claire felt Daniel's hand trembling in hers. She looked at his face and saw tears streaming down his cheeks. "I told Vanessa that my marriage ended because we wanted different things. I told my friends that Claire left me. I told myself that I was the victim. That I had given so much and received so little. That I deserved happiness. But the truth is, Claire gave me everything. When I had nothing, when I was rejected by everyone, when my own family didn't believe in me, she stood by me. She worked double shifts to keep us afloat. She believed in my dreams when I didn't believe in them myself. She loved me when I wasn't worth loving. And the moment I succeeded, the moment I became someone important, I threw her away like she was nothing." He looked out at the crowd. "I wanted all of you to see me as successful. As someone who had made it. As someone worth knowing. And I thought erasing my past was part of that. I thought Claire represented failure and struggle, and I didn't want to be associated with those things anymore. So I tried to erase her. I tried to pretend she never existed. I tried to build a life on lies. And I thought I could get away with it. I thought if I just moved forward fast enough, if I built my new life big enough and bright enough, the truth would stay buried." He turned to Claire. "But truth doesn't work that way. Truth waits. Truth watches. Truth remembers. And eventually, truth walks through the door and makes you face what you've done." His voice broke. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I know saying sorry doesn't undo what I did. It doesn't erase the nights you cried yourself to sleep. It doesn't change the fact that you faced this pregnancy alone while I was planning a wedding. It doesn't fix the betrayal. But I need you to know that I see you now. I see what I threw away. I see what I destroyed. And I will spend the rest of my life regretting it." Claire's eyes filled with tears. Not from relief. Not from forgiveness. But from exhaustion. From the weight of carrying a truth no one wanted to believe until it stood in front of them. She had prepared herself for confrontation. For Daniel to deny everything. For security to drag her out. She hadn't prepared for this. For him to tell the truth. For him to confess publicly. For him to choose, in this moment, honesty over self-preservation. But truth, even when it comes late, doesn't erase harm. And Daniel's confession, however honest, didn't undo the months of pain and abandonment. "I didn't come here to ruin your wedding," Claire said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken since entering the room, and her voice carried in the silent hall. "I came here because I needed you to see me. I needed everyone to see me. I needed our child to know, someday, that I didn't hide. That I stood up and told the truth even when it was hard, even when it would have been easier to stay home and let you rewrite history." She pulled her hand from his. "But this doesn't change anything between us, Daniel. You made your choice. You chose to leave when I needed you most. You chose to abandon your child. You chose to lie to everyone. You can't unmake those choices by confessing in front of 200 people. This doesn't erase the fear. It doesn't undo the nights I spent alone, terrified, wondering how I would do this by myself. It doesn't rewrite the fact that you chose someone else while I was carrying your baby." She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby move inside her. "I didn't come here for you. I came here for her. So she'll always know that her mother fought for the truth. So she'll always know that some things are worth standing up for, even when it costs you everything. That's all I needed. I'm done now." And with that, Claire turned and walked back down the aisle. Her steps were slow but steady. Her head was up. She refused to hurry, refused to look ashamed. She had nothing to be ashamed of. The guests parted for her, creating a path. Some of them were crying. Some looked furious, though she couldn't tell who they were angry at. Some looked ashamed, as if they understood they had been complicit in something wrong simply by showing up. Claire walked past all of them, down the aisle, through the entrance hall, and out the front doors. The September afternoon was warm. Golden light filtered through the oak trees. The fountain with the swans bubbled peacefully. The world continued, indifferent to the explosion that had just happened inside. Claire stood on the steps of the Rosewood estate for a moment, breathing in the fresh air. Her hands were still shaking. Her heart was still racing. But she felt lighter. Not happy. Not vindicated. Just lighter. As if she had been carrying a boulder for months and had finally set it down. Sarah was leaning against her car in the parking lot, pacing nervously. When she saw Claire emerge, she ran toward her. "Oh my God. Are you okay? What happened?" People are streaming out of there looking shocked. "I saw 3 people crying. One guy threw up in the bushes." Claire let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. "I told the truth. And he admitted it." Sarah's eyes went wide as dinner plates. "He admitted it? In front of everyone?" "In front of everyone. He told them we're still married. Told them about the baby. Told them he lied. Holy shit. I know." Sarah pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of Claire's belly. "You are the bravest person I know. I would have passed out. I would have thrown up with that guy in the bushes. How are you even standing?" "I don't know," Claire admitted. "Adrenaline, maybe. Come on. Let's get you home." They drove back to Claire's apartment in near silence. Sarah kept glancing over, checking on her, but didn't push for details. Claire stared out the window, watching the city pass by, feeling numb. The adrenaline was wearing off now, replaced by exhaustion so profound she could barely keep her eyes open. When they got to Claire's apartment, Sarah helped her inside, made her sit on the couch, brought her water and crackers. "You should eat something," Sarah said. "You've been through a trauma." "I can't." "Try." Claire managed a few crackers. The baby was moving constantly, strong kicks and rolls, as if she too was agitated by everything that had happened. Sarah sat beside her, holding her hand. "Do you regret it?" she asked after a while. Claire thought about that. "No. I needed to do it. Not for him. For me. And for her." She patted her belly. "So she'll know. She'll know her mother is a warrior." Claire smiled tiredly. "I'm not a warrior. I'm just tired." Same thing, sometimes. That night, Claire lay in bed, exhausted but unable to sleep. Her mind kept replaying the day. Daniel's face when he saw her. The gasps from the crowd. Vanessa's heartbreak. The confession. Every moment was seared into her memory. She thought about what would happen next. The fallout. The gossip. The legal complications. Part of her regretted it, worried about the stress on the baby. But mostly, she felt at peace. She had told the truth. She had refused to be erased. And that had to count for something. For the first time in months, as dawn broke over the city, Claire slept deeply. The fallout was immediate, brutal, and public. By Sunday morning, less than 24 hours after the ceremony that never was, the story was everywhere. Not in mainstream news outlets, not yet, but in the networks that mattered. Group chats. Social media. WhatsApp groups. The gossip mills that fuel modern society. Someone had recorded parts of Daniel's confession. Multiple someones, actually. The videos were shaky, the audio sometimes unclear, but they were enough. Daniel's face, pale and anguished. Claire's pregnant silhouette. Vanessa's tears. The truth laid bare in real time. The videos were shared thousands of times within hours. Commentary exploded across platforms. Some people praised Claire for her courage, called her brave for standing up, said Daniel got what he deserved. Others criticized her, said she should have handled it privately, claimed she was attention-seeking, argued that public humiliation wasn't justice. The debates raged online, strangers arguing passionately about people they didn't know. Daniel's phone rang non-stop. Friends, family, business associates, everyone demanding explanations, apologies, answers. His mother called him sobbing, asking how he could have done this to the family name. His father called him an hour later, voice cold with rage, and told him he had disgraced them all. Told him not to come to family events. Told him to fix this or consider himself disinherited. Daniel's younger sister texted him a single message, "I'm ashamed to be related to you." His business partners scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday morning. When Daniel arrived at the office, faces that had been friendly for years were now cold, distant, professional. They sat around the conference table, and the senior partner, a man named Marcus who had mentored Daniel, got straight to it. What the hell happened on Saturday? Daniel tried to explain, stumbled through the story, how he had panicked about the pregnancy, how he had met Vanessa, how things had spiraled, how he knew it was wrong but didn't know how to fix it. Marcus listened, face impassive. When Daniel finished, Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Do you understand what you've done? Not just to your personal life, but to this firm?" "I know. I'm sorry. 3 clients called this morning. 3. They want to know if you'll be continuing on their projects. They're concerned about your judgment. About your character. If you can lie to your pregnant wife and your fiancé, they're wondering what else you might lie about. What corners you might cut. What ethics you might compromise." Daniel felt cold. "I would never compromise a project. But you compromised 2 women who trusted you. You see how that looks?" The partners deliberated for 30 minutes while Daniel waited outside. When they called him back in, their decision was clear. He was being removed from active projects. He would continue to receive a salary for now, while they evaluated the situation, but he was effectively sidelined. No client contact. No new projects. They would revisit his status in 6 months. "This is a gift," Marcus told him. "Most firms would terminate you immediately. We're giving you a chance to fix your life. Don't waste it." Clients began to distance themselves. Not all of them, but enough to hurt. Contracts were quietly reviewed. Projects were reassigned to other architects in the firm. Invitations to industry events stopped coming. Daniel had spent years building a reputation, and it crumbled in days. His social media accounts exploded with comments, most of them negative. He eventually deleted all his profiles. The silence was better than the constant judgment. Vanessa, meanwhile, was drowning. She had deleted all her social media accounts Saturday night, unable to handle the comments, the questions, the pity. Her inbox had been flooded with messages. Friends expressing concern, acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in years reaching out. Strangers offering opinions. She couldn't handle any of it. She moved back in with her parents temporarily, needing space to process what had happened. Her childhood bedroom felt surreal after living independently for years. The posters she had hung as a teenager were still on the walls. Her mother brought her tea and sat with her while she cried. Her father paced the living room, furious, wanting to do something, anything, but powerless. "He lied to you," her father kept saying. "He manipulated you. There has to be legal recourse. We should sue him. We should press charges." But Vanessa just shook her head, exhausted. For what, Dad? Being a liar? That's not illegal. There has to be something. The law can't fix a broken heart. She spent weeks replaying every conversation, every moment, looking for signs she had missed. Had there been red flags? Had he ever slipped up? Had she ignored her instincts? She remembered times when Daniel had been vague about his past, but she had attributed that to pain from the divorce. She remembered him always being available, never mentioning obligations or complications, and now she understood why. He had no obligations because he had cut Claire out entirely. She remembered thinking it was odd that he wanted to marry so quickly, but she had been flattered, thought it meant he was certain. Now she understood it was urgency born from guilt, a race to outrun the truth. The signs had been there. She had just chosen not to see them. Her therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Reynolds, told her that manipulators are skilled at hiding red flags. That it wasn't her fault. That she had operated in good faith with the information she had. But Vanessa still felt stupid. Used. Gullible. She had prided herself on being smart, careful, successful. And she had been completely fooled. Eventually, she realized it didn't matter. She couldn't change the past. She could only move forward. Slowly, carefully. With more questions and fewer assumptions. 3 months after the wedding that never was, on a cold January morning with snow falling softly outside the hospital windows, Claire gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The labor was long and difficult, 36 hours from the first contraction to the final push. Claire labored through the night, Sarah and her mother taking turns holding her hand, timing contractions, reminding her to breathe. When the pain became unbearable, the nurses offered an epidural, but Claire refused at first, wanting to feel everything. To be present for every moment. By hour 20, she accepted. The relief was profound. At 6:43 in the morning, as dawn broke over the city, the doctor finally said, "One more push, Claire. She's almost here." And with a final effort that drew on reserves Claire didn't know she had, her daughter entered the world. The baby's cry was immediate and loud, a strong wail that filled the delivery room. The nurses laughed, a good sign, and after quickly checking her, they placed the tiny, squirming infant on Claire's chest. Claire looked down at her daughter and felt something shift inside her. A tectonic movement of her entire being. This was what it had all been for. This small, perfect life. Every moment of pain, every night of fear, every public humiliation, led to this. The baby had dark hair, lots of it, matted to her small head. Her eyes were blue, though the nurses said that might change. Her fingers were impossibly tiny but gripped Claire's thumb with surprising strength. She had a loud cry and a watchful gaze that seemed to steady Claire's face. "Hello, Grace," Claire whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your mama. I've been waiting for you." She had decided on the name months ago. Grace Mitchell. Not Grace Carter. Claire wanted her daughter to carry her name, her strength, her story. Grace would know where she came from. Would know the woman who fought for her before she was even born. Sarah was there for the birth, had been there through the entire labor, and when she saw Grace for the first time, she cried too. "She's perfect, Claire. She's absolutely perfect." Claire's mother, who had flown in a week earlier to help, stood at the side of the bed, hands clasped, face wet with tears. "She looks just like you did," she said. The same serious expression, like she's already thinking deep thoughts. The hospital room over the next few days was filled with flowers, cards, and stuffed animals from friends and co-workers. Claire's nursing colleagues sent a giant basket. The other women from her prenatal class sent a group gift. Even some of the patients she had cared for over the years, or their families, sent notes of congratulations. The room smelled like roses and lavender. Every surface was covered with tokens of love and support, but nothing from Daniel. Not a card, not a call, not a text. His absence was notable, and everyone noticed it. Sarah, always protective, said, "You don't need him anyway. Grace has you, and you're more than enough." But Claire knew it wasn't that simple. A child needed more than enough. A child needed to know where she came from. 6 weeks after Grace was born, during a rare moment when the baby was sleeping and Claire had showered and eaten, there was a knock on her apartment door. Claire opened it to find Daniel standing there. He looked terrible. Thinner than she remembered, his face gaunt, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes, usually so carefully chosen, were rumpled. His hair needed cutting. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice uncertain. Claire hesitated. She was wearing sweatpants and one of Sarah's old t-shirts, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked like exactly what she was, a new mother operating on 3 hours of sleep, but she stepped aside. Daniel entered slowly, looking around the apartment. It had changed since he'd lived there. Baby equipment everywhere, a bassinet in the corner, diapers stacked on the coffee table, laundry in piles waiting to be folded. The organized chaos of new parenthood. Is that her? Daniel asked, nodding toward the bassinet. Yes. Her name is Grace. Can I see her? Claire walked over and carefully lifted Grace out. The baby stirred but didn't wake, making small snuffling sounds. Claire cradled her daughter, protective, then after a moment's hesitation, handed her to Daniel. Support her head, she instructed. I know, Daniel said, but his hands were shaking as he took her. He held his daughter for the first time, and his face crumpled completely. Tears streamed down his cheeks. He made no sound, but his shoulders shook. He stared at Grace like she was the most precious thing in the world. She's beautiful, he whispered. She looks like you. She has your eyes. She has your hair, Claire said. They sat in silence for a while, Daniel holding Grace, Claire watching him carefully, ready to take the baby back at any moment. Grace slept peacefully, unaware of the complexity of the moment. Finally, Daniel spoke. I want to be part of her life. I know I don't deserve it. I know I destroyed your trust. I know I abandoned both of you when you needed me most. But please, Claire, let me know my daughter. Let me try to be the father she deserves. Claire had thought about this constantly since Grace was born, had wrestled with it during sleepless nights. On one hand, she wanted Daniel nowhere near them. He had proven himself unreliable, selfish, capable of breathtaking cruelty. On the other hand, Grace deserved to know her father, deserved the chance to have a relationship with him, and Claire remembered what it felt like to grow up without a father, her own dad having left when she was young. She didn't want that for Grace. I've thought about this a lot, Claire said, and I'm going to let you be part of her life. Not for you. For her. Because every child deserves to know their father. But we're doing this on my terms. You'll see her when I say you can see her. You'll contribute financially, we'll work out child support. And if you ever lie to me again, if you miss visits without explanation, if you put your needs above hers, you're done. Do you understand? Daniel nodded quickly. I understand. I'll do whatever you want. Whatever you think is best. Thank you, Claire. I know I don't deserve this. You don't, Claire agreed, her voice hard. But Grace does. And that's the only reason we're having this conversation. Daniel visited every other weekend after that. At first, he was awkward, nervous, unsure how to hold Grace, how to change a diaper, how to soothe her when she cried. He called Claire constantly with questions. Is she supposed to spit up this much? Is her cry normal? Why won't she stop crying? Claire patiently answered, sometimes amused despite herself at how clueless he was. But he learned. Slowly but surely, he figured out Grace's cues. Learned that she liked to be held facing out so she could see everything. Learned that she calmed down when he sang, even though he couldn't carry a tune. Learned that she had a strong preference for her purple pacifier over the green one. And Claire watched, guarded but willing to give him the chance to prove he could be the father Grace deserved. She saw him showing up consistently, which was more than she had expected. She saw him genuinely trying to bond with Grace, reading to her even though she was too young to understand, talking to her constantly, treating her like a person rather than an object. It didn't erase what he had done. It didn't heal the betrayal, but it was a start. Vanessa, meanwhile, had made a decision. 6 months after the wedding, she moved to Seattle. She accepted a job at a tech startup, a company developing sustainable fashion supply chains. It was completely different from her old life, and that was exactly what she needed. She wanted distance, wanted to be somewhere no one knew her story, wanted to start over in a place where she wasn't that woman from the wedding. Seattle suited her. The rain felt cleansing. The coffee was excellent. The city was full of people reinventing themselves, and she fit right in. She cut her hair short, a dramatic change that felt symbolic. Let go of the long waves that Daniel had loved running his fingers through. She started therapy with Dr. Sarah Chen, a specialist in trauma and betrayal. Twice a week, she sat in a comfortable office overlooking Puget Sound and unpacked everything. Dr. Chen helped her understand that what happened wasn't her fault, that manipulators are skilled at what they do. That believing in someone's lies doesn't make you stupid, it makes you human. The therapy helped. Slowly, but the real healing came from time and distance and building a life that belonged only to her. She dated cautiously after about a year, went on coffee dates that sometimes went nowhere, Met nice men who she didn't quite connect with. Eventually, she met Alex, a software engineer with kind eyes and a dry sense of humor. He knew her story, she told him early on, believing that honesty was the only foundation worth building on. He listened, didn't judge, and said, "That sounds really hard. I'm sorry that happened to you." They took things slow, so slow that Vanessa's friends joked about it, but slow felt right. She needed to learn to trust again, and you can't rush that. One night, about 2 years after the wedding, Vanessa ran into one of the guests from that day. She was at a tech conference in San Francisco, representing her company, when she saw Jessica from Daniel's old firm. Jessica recognized her immediately. She approached carefully, as if approaching a wild animal. "Vanessa? I thought that was you. How are you?" Vanessa could have walked away, could have pretended not to remember, but she didn't. "I'm good, actually, really good." Jessica looked relieved. "I'm so glad. What happened that day was horrible. I felt terrible for you." "It was horrible," Vanessa agreed. "But honestly, it was also the best thing that could have happened to me. Better to find out then than 5 years and 2 kids later." Jessica nodded. "I heard Daniel's business basically collapsed. He's working for a smaller firm now, doing residential projects mostly. Lost most of his big clients." Vanessa felt a flicker of something. Not satisfaction, exactly, but validation. "I hope he learned something. What about you? Are you happy?" "I am," Vanessa said, and realized she meant it. "I'm in Seattle. New job, new life. Dating someone wonderful. I'm better than okay. I'm actually thriving." "That's amazing," Jessica said. "You deserve it." After the conference, Vanessa thought about that conversation. Thought about how far she had come from the woman in the white dress, walking down an aisle toward a future that was built on lies. She pulled out her phone and posted something on social media for the first time in 2 years. Just a photo of her standing on a mountain trail near Seattle, arms raised toward the sky, sunlight breaking through the clouds. The caption read, "2 years ago, I thought my life was ending. Turns out, it was just beginning. To everyone going through something hard, the view from the other side is worth the climb. Keep going." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years reached out. Strangers sent messages of support. The post was shared hundreds of times. And sitting in her apartment in Phoenix, scrolling through social media while Grace napped, Claire saw it. She stared at the photo for a long time. She didn't know Vanessa personally. They had never spoken after that day, had never even made eye contact in that wedding hall. But Claire felt a strange kinship with her. 2 women who had been caught in the same man's web of lies. 2 women who had survived. 2 women who had found their way out and built something new. Claire sent the screenshot to Daniel with a simple message. "Vanessa seems happy. I hope you learned from what you put us through." He responded an hour later. "I think about that day every single day. It's the worst thing I've ever done, but also the most honest moment of my life. I'm trying to be better, for Grace, for myself. I'm in therapy, working on understanding why I did what I did. Trying to make sure I never hurt someone like that again. I'm sorry I hurt you both." Claire read the message and then put her phone away. Apologies were nice, but they didn't undo the past. What mattered was action, consistency, change. And time would tell if Daniel was capable of any of those things. Grace grew up knowing her story. Not all at once, of course. You don't tell a toddler about betrayal and weddings and complex adult failures. But gradually, in age-appropriate pieces, Claire made sure her daughter knew the truth. When Grace was 5, playing with dolls in their living room, she asked, "Why don't you and Daddy live together?" Claire, who had prepared for this question, sat down beside her. "Sometimes people love each other but can't be together. But that doesn't mean they don't love you. Both of us love you so much." But Sarah's parents lived together. "Every family is different, sweetheart. Some families have 2 parents in one house. Some have parents in different houses. Some have 1 parent. Some have grandparents or aunts or uncles. What matters is love, not how the house is arranged." Grace seemed to accept this, returning to her dolls. But Claire knew more questions would come. When Grace was 8, working on a school project about family trees, she asked, "Why is my last name Mitchell and Daddy's is Carter?" Claire explained, "You have my name because I wanted you to know that you come from a strong line of women who don't give up. My mother, your grandmother, raised me mostly by herself, and she was incredibly strong. I wanted you to carry that strength in your name." "But what about Daddy's family? You're part of his family too. Names are just words. What matters is who you are and who you love." Grace thought about this. "I like being a Mitchell." "Me too, honey." When Grace was 12, starting middle school and newly interested in stories and truth and justice, she asked for the full story. She had pieced together bits over the years from overheard conversations, from things her father had said, from the careful way adults talked around certain topics. But she wanted to know everything. Claire decided she was old enough now. Old enough to understand complexity and nuance. Old enough to handle difficult truths. So one evening, after dinner, Claire sat Grace down and told her everything: the marriage, the struggle, the success, the betrayal, the pregnancy, the divorce papers, the new fiancé, the wedding. Walking into that room. Daniel's confession. The aftermath. Grace listened quietly, her face serious, absorbing it all. She was a thoughtful child, always had been, someone who processed deeply before responding. When Claire finished, Grace was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Did Dad ever apologize?" "Yes. Many times." "Do you forgive him?" Claire thought about that. She had thought about it many times over the years. "I don't know if I forgive him completely. Some things are hard to forgive. But I don't hate him. And I'm grateful that he's been a good father to you. He shows up. He's consistent. He loves you. That's what matters most." "What about Vanessa? Do you think about her?" "Sometimes. I hope she's happy. She didn't deserve what happened to her either." Grace nodded, processing. Then she said something that made Claire's heart swell. "I'm glad you went to that wedding." "Why?" "Because you taught me something important. You taught me that truth matters. That you don't have to hide. That even when it's hard, even when it costs you everything, you stand up for yourself and for what's right." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "That's exactly what I wanted you to learn, baby." "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Were you scared? When you walked into that room?" Claire thought back to that day, to standing in the parking lot, to walking through those doors, to facing 200 strangers. "Terrified. I almost turned around a dozen times. But I kept thinking about you. About what kind of mother I wanted to be. What kind of example I wanted to set. And I realized that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway." Grace hugged her mother tightly. "You're the bravest person I know. You're pretty brave yourself, kiddo. You ask hard questions. You think deeply. You don't just accept easy answers. That takes courage too." That night, lying in bed, Claire thought about the conversation. About how Grace was growing into someone strong and thoughtful and kind. About how all the pain and struggle had been worth it to raise this incredible human. About how trauma, when processed and healed, could become wisdom. About how her daughter would carry forward the lessons Claire had learned the hard way. And Claire felt, for the first time in years, truly at peace with everything that had happened. 5 years after the wedding, Daniel wrote Claire a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter, the kind people don't write anymore. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in November, in her mailbox, in an envelope with his careful handwriting. Claire recognized his script immediately. She almost threw it away. She didn't owe him her attention, didn't owe him the emotional labor of reading his words. But curiosity got the better of her. She waited until Grace was at school, made herself a cup of tea, sat down at her kitchen table, and opened the envelope. The letter was long, several pages, filled with his slanting handwriting. He wrote about the years since that day, about how he had lost almost everything: his reputation, his business connections, most of his friends, his family's respect, his sense of self, about how he had spent months in therapy, going twice a week, sometimes more, trying to understand why he had done what he did, about how his therapist had helped him see that his actions came from fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of being forgotten, fear of returning to poverty and struggle. About how he had wrapped his entire identity around success and status, and when Claire represented something other than success, he had tried to erase her. He wrote about watching Grace grow up and feeling both grateful and ashamed. Grateful that Claire had given him the chance to be her father. Ashamed that he had almost thrown it all away. Ashamed that his daughter would grow up knowing what he had done. He wrote about his new life, smaller and quieter. He had left the big firm after a year, unable to handle the constant judgment and lost opportunities. Now he worked for a mid-sized company, designing residential homes, nothing glamorous. He made a fraction of what he used to make. He lived in a modest apartment. He drove a 10-year-old car, but he was honest now. He showed up for Grace consistently. He paid his child support on time. He attended therapy. He volunteered at a homeless shelter, trying to remember where he came from. He wrote about Vanessa, about how he had tried to reach out and apologize and she had blocked him, about how he understood why. About how he hoped she had found happiness and peace. About how he carried the guilt of hurting her, but accepted that some things couldn't be fixed, only learned from. And then he wrote, I know I can never undo what I did. I know sorry isn't enough. Words are cheap, especially from someone who lied as much as I did. But I want you to know that you changed my life that day. Not by ruining my wedding. By refusing to let me bury the truth. You could have stayed home. You could have let me live my lie. You could have protected yourself and Grace from the stress and judgment. But you didn't. And because you didn't, I had to face what I had become. It was the most painful moment of my life. But also the most important. I'm a better man now because of it. Not good enough, probably never good enough, but better. I see now what I couldn't see then. That success without integrity is empty. That status without character is worthless. That the people who stand by you when you have nothing are worth more than all the fame and money in the world. Thank you for Grace. She's the best thing I've ever been part of, even if I didn't deserve her. Thank you for giving me the chance to be her father, to know her, to learn from her. And thank you, in a strange way, for that day, for forcing me to be honest. For refusing to let me hide. I needed that, even though I didn't want it. I hope you're happy, Claire. I hope you've found peace. You deserve every good thing. Claire read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. But she kept it, because someday, maybe, Grace would want to know that her father had learned. That he had changed. That truth, no matter how painful, had the power to transform. That confrontation, when it came from a place of integrity rather than revenge, could actually save someone. Claire walked to the window and looked out at the city. It was a gray November day, rain threatening, the kind of day that used to make her sad. But she didn't feel sad now. She felt grateful. Grateful for Grace, who was smart and kind and growing into someone extraordinary. Grateful for Sarah, who had stood by her through everything. Grateful for her own strength, which she hadn't fully known she possessed until she needed it. Grateful, even, for the pain, because it had taught her who she was. Now, think about this story. Think about Claire, 7 months pregnant, walking into that wedding hall. Think about the courage that took, the fear she must have felt, the certainty she needed. What would you have done in her place? Would you have stayed home, protected yourself, avoided the confrontation? Would you have sent a lawyer instead, handled it legally, kept your distance? Or would you have done exactly what she did, stood up, showed up, and forced the truth into the light? There's no wrong answer. Everyone handles betrayal differently. But think about what her choice means. She wasn't seeking revenge. She wasn't trying to destroy Daniel out of spite. She was refusing to be erased. She was standing up for herself and for her unborn child. She was saying, my story matters. My truth matters. You don't get to rewrite history just because it's convenient for you. And there's power in that. Power in refusing to hide. Power in insisting that the truth be told, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you everything. Think about Vanessa. She was an innocent victim in all of this. She believed the man she loved. She planned a future with him. And in one moment, standing at the altar in her white dress, that future shattered. How would you feel if you were her? If you discovered that everything you believed was a lie? If the person you trusted most had been deceiving you from the beginning? Would you be able to rebuild? Would you be able to trust again? Vanessa did. It took her years, therapy, distance, and time. But she rebuilt. She created a new life. She found happiness again. And that's its own kind of courage. The courage to start over when everything falls apart. And what about Daniel? Can a man like that truly change? Can someone who lies so completely, who abandons so thoroughly, who causes so much pain, become someone trustworthy? Or is the confession just another performance? Is his relationship with Grace genuine, or is it redemption theater? These are uncomfortable questions. But they're the kind of questions we all face when people in our lives betray us and then ask for another chance. The answer isn't simple. People can change. But change requires more than words. It requires consistent action over time. It requires genuine accountability. It requires understanding not just what you did wrong, but why? And it requires accepting that some people may never forgive you, and that's their right. Daniel seems to be trying, showing up for Grace, going to therapy, living more honestly. Does that erase what he did? No. Does that mean Claire has to forgive him? No. Does that mean Vanessa has to give him closure? No. But it does mean that even people who do terrible things can learn and grow. And that's worth acknowledging. Think about your own life now. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have you ever been the one who betrayed? Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and revealing a difficult truth? These moments define us. They show us who we are when everything is on the line. They reveal our values, our priorities, our capacity for courage or cowardice. Claire chose truth. She chose courage. She chose to stand up even when it would have been easier to hide. Vanessa chose healing. She chose to rebuild rather than remain bitter. She chose to believe in love again despite being devastated. Daniel chose confession. Late, painful, public confession. He chose accountability over continued deception. And Grace will grow up knowing all of this. She'll know that her mother fought for her before she was even born. That her father failed catastrophically but tried to do better. That truth matters more than comfort. That courage means being scared and doing it anyway. That redemption is possible but not guaranteed. That family is complicated. That people fail. That people can also rise again. These are hard lessons. But they're true lessons. The kind that shape a person. The kind that make you stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Think about what this story means for you. When you face betrayal, how will you respond? When you face the choice between comfort and truth, which will you choose? When someone who hurt you asks for forgiveness, how will you decide? When you've hurt someone, will you have the courage to truly take accountability? These questions don't have easy answers. But they're worth asking. Because life will ask them of you, probably more than once. And the way you answer will determine who you become. If this story shook you, if it made you think, if it resonated with something in your own experience, let us know. Comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us if you've experienced betrayal. Tell us how you found your way through. Tell us what courage looks like in your life. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because we tell stories like this. Stories that don't just entertain. Stories that don't just pass the time. Stories that make you think. Stories that challenge you. Stories that remind you that truth, no matter how painful, is always worth fighting for. Stories that show you real people facing impossible choices and finding their way through. Stories that stay with you long after they end. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Your time matters. Your attention matters. And we don't take it for granted. Until next time, remember, truth doesn't need revenge. It only needs space to breathe. Courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and showing up anyway. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be invisible. Take care of yourselves. And remember, your story matters too.